Looks like we're live. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cougar. This is my channel. I talk about stuff, science-y stuff. Welcome back. Welcome if you are new. Today, I want to talk specifically to the people of Florida. I don't know how many people on my channel are from Florida. I don't know how many people from Florida will watch this video, but I have to say some things to the people of Florida right now. Where to start? So, Florida has had a really bad run. They're not the only ones. They had a bad run in the western part of North Carolina. If anything, slightly worse. Those people are probably wiped out maybe for a decade. It's going to be very hard to fix things for those people. Florida has a slightly smaller problem in terms of the extent to which they were wiped out. But nevertheless, a lot of people were involved in Florida with the last two hurricanes. We're talking specifically about Helene and Milton that came 2 weeks apart. And I may as well include anything that comes within the next 2 weeks because there's another potential hurricane brewing in the same place where Helene and Milton started out. So good luck, Florida, with all that. Oh, today what I want to speak to, though, is that the people of Florida, especially in the western side, the west coast of Florida, on the Gulf of Mexico side, are in a particularly bad place right now. And I'm going to speak specifically to them. If you're not from Florida, this may not interest you. If you are from Florida, you should probably pay attention. That's my recommendation. You people you're in trouble. I think of you are aware of that. And that's why I'm coming on here on this channel on YouTube to speak to you directly, because I doubt anyone else on the planet, I doubt even one other person on the planet is going to speak to you in the way that I'm just about to do. That doesn't make me special. It just makes me aware of your problem. And I think you understand your problem. And maybe you're looking for some support and some answers. I can't support you with money. And I don't think you need money right now. I mean, you do in the short term. But what you need is understanding. You are confused. You are bitter. You are looking for someone to blame. You wonder if you did the wrong thing. Maybe you should not have evacuated. Maybe you should have evacuated. Maybe you should have never moved to Florida in the first place. Maybe you should not have rebuilt after the last hurricane that came through 2 years ago. Maybe you should have taken that as a warning to get out. And my recommendation to the people of Florida is that you get out. You need to get out of Florida, especially if you live on the west coast of Florida, on the Gulf of Mexico side. I understand in advance that most of you, in fact, I will just say, none of you will be able to do that. Most of you don't have the resources to do that. You're invested, you have a home, maybe it's not much of a home, but it's what you have, right? It's your home, it's all you've got. Maybe you didn't sunk all of your money into your home, but you're now beginning to suspect that you're in deep trouble, and you are. Now, this is where I have to, so I want to validate that feeling, first of all. Yes, you feel like you're in trouble, and you are. Furthermore, I don't think any government is going to come to your aid. What you need is not to be made whole. What you need is something entirely different. And they can't give you what you need. But I think you're ready to know what it is actually you need. In the state of Florida, it's actually illegal to discuss this topic out in the open. And worse than that, it's a taboo. I understand that the people of Florida can't actually, they don't have the language anymore to wrap their head around what is happening to them and what they need to do as a consequence. And the problem, of course, is that you are not allowed to discuss. It's illegal in Florida to discuss. Your government agencies can't do it, and your neighbors won't. It's a taboo. It's un-American. It's whatever, communist. I don't know what the problem is. But it is now officially in Florida illegal to invoke any solution around the now present and continuing problem of. Now, I happen to be in slight agreement with Governor DeSantis on why you really don't need to discuss. On this channel, I have made a point frequently, practically every video, and I've done hundreds of videos on this topic in the last several years. I do a video almost every day, and almost every day I say the same thing. There really is no such thing. There is no such thing. There is no problem, really. I mean, fundamentally, with your problem is with physics. The Earth, we used to say, was warming due to excess carbon emissions into the atmosphere, enhancing the greenhouse effect. And those carbon emissions were coming from a combustion of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. We used to call it global warming. But in the last few years, last 5, certainly, maybe definitely the last 3, the situation has gotten so bad. And we know the situation because we can measure it. The situation has gotten so bad that it's completely inadequate to call it global warming. We now need to call it global heating. And what just happened to you with these 2 hurricanes, even though 2 hurricanes is a bit unusual, either one of these would have been sufficient to alarm you to what is happening to you. The Gulf of Mexico is getting hot. There's enough heat out there to spin up locally in your own backyard, not from Africa, not from the Pacific Ocean, right there in the Gulf of Mexico, your backyard. There's enough energy stored up in the water to spin up enormous hurricanes. Helene was basically off the charts. It got some help from a Fujiwara effect over Appalachia and became pretty much just murderous. But even when it came ashore in Florida, it was extremely, extremely dangerous. And there were many, many communities that were wiped out and left standing on the beach, which was basically in their front yard. The beach had moved to their front yard and standing on the beach, wondering what just happened. And then 2 weeks later, Milton came along from a slightly different direction and blew away a bunch more communities and then spawned an enormous tornado outbreak on the eastern side of Florida, and then rained buckets over all of Florida, causing standing freshwater floods, not storm surge, freshwater floods that are still there and are causing additional evacuations because standing water, especially in a semi-tropical place like Florida, leads to waterborne diseases. And the number of people who get killed now in the days ahead, the number of people who die from cholera, gastrointestinal diseases, dehydration from those, right, will likely eclipse the people who actually died in the storms. This happens all the time, for example, in Africa, Bangladesh, Pakistan. They get a big storm that comes in, it kills a bunch of people, destroys a bunch of homes, and then the water sits around and festers for weeks or months. And then there's a whole nother bunch of deaths due to waterborne diseases. The water becomes contaminated. People don't know they can't drink it. People don't know they can't even stand in it. And all the same, they get sick. They have to do these things, and so they get sick. So you're in a bad place, Floridians. You're in a really bad way. The problems you're having right now are essentially insurmountable, and you need to get out. That is my actual advice. I'm not a realtor. I'm not an economist. I'm just a scientist. And I'm telling you, there's more where this came from, and you need to get out. And I'm saying that because I know you're kind of thinking that. And I want you to understand that is a valid thought. That is not a crazy thought. You need to get out. I understand, having said that, that you can't. You cannot get out. This is a problem that you now share with people all over this planet, people who are in the way of terrible calamities that are happening to them monthly, weekly, 4 or 5 times a year. They barely dredge themselves out of the mud and the sand and the wreckage and the flotsam. They barely get their families back together. They barely get their families out of the hospital. And then it happens again. And the cycle just keeps repeating. And that is now your fate, Florida, because of global heating. It's not going away. It will only get worse. You need to understand that. You may not want to hear that. You may not even believe that. And your political leaders may tell you that I'm full of it. But you need to understand, I have no dog in this fight. I'm in California. You're in Florida. You know, to us, Florida's a joke. Well, right now, Florida is not a joke to me. You're people. You are U.S. citizens, and basically, you're people. All right. And I would have the same message for the people in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Italy, Greece, Turkey. You need to get out. I don't know where you're welcome. I don't know where you can go. I don't know how you're going to get there. But I'm just here to tell you, you need to get out. And if you have any avenue, any resources, any means, if you get an insurance check or what happens for you, something gives you a landline, you need to get out. Right now, there's 3 million people without electricity in Florida. That's going to be a common occurrence in Florida. Right now, they're pumping high tides out of their major cities on the Florida coast, the wealthy part, right? The East Coast, where they actually get money and equipment and technology to help themselves. They get high tides. They have to pump the seawater out of their business districts. And, they're installing $100 million worth of pumps to accomplish that. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but at least they have the money and the political throw. And if you're on the west coast of Florida, you have nothing. And you know that. And you can throw shade at FEMA all you want to, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and how it's all a bunch of reptilians or, controlled by illegal immigrants or whatever you want to say. They're going to come in, they're going to try and help you, but they can't make you whole, and they can't change your fundamental problem, which is global heating. This is going to happen again. And if you're lucky enough to even have insurance, it's probably with the Citizens Insurance Fund or whatever it's called. It's the state of Florida, right? They are the insurer of last resort, and they got a lot of money, so they can pull that off. As the insurance companies leave Florida, and that's not a big conspiracy, they're businesses. They don't want your money. They don't want the payouts. They know what I'm saying is true. And as a business, as the insurance companies leave Florida and dump you in the hands of your state-sponsored insurance agency, that's going to go bankrupt. That's going to go bankrupt. In fact, I'm pretty sure Ron DeSantis is already on the phone to Joe Biden saying, "Hey, can you send me a quick $100 billion?" Because they're bankrupt now. They know that. And if you're lucky enough to have private insurance, they might pay out, and then they're going to drop you. Maybe you're going to get some money. Use that money to get out. Start over somewhere else. I hear there's some cheap real estate in Western North Carolina. Sarcasm. If you get any line thrown to you and you can use it to improve your situation, get out. And I don't mean putting your house on higher stilts. Abandon that as a complete loss and get out. Maybe the state will buy you out. If they come along and say, well, here's your insurance payout, but what we really want to do is just buy you out. We're only going to pay you 10 cents on the dollar for the value of your home, but we would rather you not be here. If they pay you 10 cents on the dollar or 50 cents, wow, that'd be generous. If they pay you 50 cents on the dollar for your current home, which is now probably just a cement slab. Take it. Take whatever you can get and get out. Because this part of the world, uh, the southern third of Florida in general, yeah, I know that's Miami and Miami-Dade County. And yeah, sure. I understand that. The Keys, right? Yeah, the southern third of Florida and the entire Gulf Coast, and maybe even the entire East Coast of Florida. Inland, maybe 20 miles in both cases, is now uninhabitable. I mean, it is uninhabitable. You have to wait for the floodwaters to go away and the electricity to come back and the water to be turned on and the communications to be restored. And right now it's uninhabitable. You're thinking they're going to fix all that, but it may take them 2 months, depending on how important you are. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to say it. They're going to do triage and they're going to fix things for the most number of people and for the people that, frankly, contribute to campaign coffers. And if you're not on that high up on that list of triage, if you don't get put at the top of the list, then you are by default at the bottom of the list, and you may get nothing. And what little you get may take a long time. And if there's any way for you to do it, you need to get out as a matter of urgency. You need to find a way to get out. And if you have to move into a friend's house or a family member's house in Carolina or one of the Carolinas or Georgia or Alabama or where you think you might be welcome, you have to tell them, I have to get out. I have nothing. Maybe it'll be an insurance payout. Maybe the government will buy my property for 50 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar, but I have to get out now. I can't stay here. 2 hurricanes back to back. I'm lucky to be alive. Lucky to be alive. And we just barely recovered from the hurricane, whatever it was, Ian, 2 years ago. We just barely finished painting the interior of the house from the last storm surge 2 years ago. And then all this happened to us. And we got to get out. This place is uninhabitable. No insurance company will insure any property on the Gulf Coast of Florida. They won't even offer you a policy. So the state will swoop in with their taxpayer subsidized socialist, communist insurance policy. And then what do you expect to get out of them? You'd be lucky if they paid you 20 cents on the dollar for the value of your home. It's uninhabitable. You're not going to be able to rebuild. So don't. Get out. You need to get out. Now, your leadership has already taken the stand. I believe, this sounds conspiratorial, but hear me out, and I think you might even agree. Your leadership took the stand a couple of years ago to make it impossible, illegal for emergency response agencies, urban development agencies, pension funds, government legislation, anything to talk about. And that may have been strategic. Could be they knew this was coming. So you can't even use words to describe your anxiety, that you think you're finished and that you need to get out. You can't even appeal to them. If you go into a county, supervisor's meeting, or you go into a courtroom somewhere where you're trying to get, your insurance payout, and you start blabbering on about, your real fundamental problem, which is they're going to tell you, no, we can't talk about that. We just can't talk about that on the official record, because those words, and what are the words again? Cannot be in any legal document. This is straight from 1984. You need to understand that this has been feared for a long time. In Russia, you can't talk about the Ukrainian war. You can only talk about the Ukrainian special military operation. You go to prison if you mention war in Russia. And in China, you can't talk about Tiananmen Square. They had a big dust up and many people died in Tiananmen Square when those people tried to retain or regain some of their freedoms against their totalitarian regime. And you can't talk about Tiananmen Square in China without going to prison. This is thought control. Eventually, if no one talks about it, no one thinks about it. And if no one thinks about it, it never happened. And you have the same problem. You're not going to be able to use certain words to describe your dilemma, your ongoing disaster in scientific terms. All you can do is appeal to people's sense of, what do you want to call it? Empathy. You can't even back your claim with science. So I'm here to tell you the science is real and you have to get out. Global heating is never going away. Global heating is never going away. It only gets worse year after year after year because it's a thing and it can only increase. The earth can only get hotter from now on until we stop burning all fossil fuels. And I got news for you. If the United States ever decides to curtail or stop the consumption of fossil fuels, you're doomed because your entire existence is car-based. You don't have any agriculture in your area. It's all swamps and sand. There's nothing there. People didn't used to live there. I mean, the Native Americans lived there, but they lived on the sea. They fished and they ate the kelp and they ate the native plants that grew down next to the beach. They didn't live out with the alligators. Well, maybe some of them did, but it was a hard life, right? And they were basically nomadic peoples. And it was tough. And a hurricane came through and wiped them out. And they had to start all over again because they didn't even have as good a construction materials as we have today. How many people live there? I don't know. 500,000, 250,000 in the entirety of Florida as it is now defined. Maybe something like that. But there's 42 million people living in Florida right now, all made possible by the constant day-to-day consumption of fossil fuels. And without that, which is what we have to stop doing if we're going to keep global heating anywhere near habitable, if we're just not going to render the earth completely uninhabitable, then we're going to have to stop burning fossil fuels to stop making the greenhouse effect worse, to stop heating the planet, to stop, or at least somehow manage these storms coming your way. So either way, you're screwed. You're seriously screwed. If we keep burning fossil fuels, which we will, then these storms just get worse. And if we ever stop burning fossil fuels, which we must, I know these are contradictory terms, but two things can be true at the same time, which we must, then you're screwed. You're done. Without constant fossil fuels, you're done. Without constant fossil fuels, you can't rebuild. And you won't have electricity, and they're not going to fix the power poles, and they can't bring the water back, and they just won't be able to. And you need to get out. Now, my advice would be you need to go someplace where, global heating and its effects are not so deleterious. And if it's any comfort, people of Florida, the entirety of the coastlines of the lower 48 of, it's really Alaska and Hawaii too, all 50 states, but not the interior states, but definitely the coastal states plus Alaska and plus Hawaii are going to have to abandon their coastlines. And as you can see in Florida, you don't need 70 feet of sea level rise that you suddenly have to abandon the coastlines of Florida. You need to get out now because of the hurricanes. You're done. You don't have to wait for the ice to melt. They may have to wait for the ice to melt, interior Georgia or interior Alabama. I think those probably go completely underwater. Maybe interior Nebraska doesn't have to worry about all the ice melting. Yeah, that's probably safe. But all the Mississippi states, all the Ohio River states, all the inland waterway states, the Lawrence, whatever they call it, canal, all these, Hudson River, all of these places are going to be inundated by the melting of the ice. And eventually they'll be underwater. And that doesn't have to take very long. It maybe takes 50 years or 100 years for something important to happen. But that's not your actual problem. Your actual problem is the weather. We don't have that kind of weather in California. I'm not advising you to come to California. It's probably too expensive for you here. Probably the reason you live in Florida on the coast where it's affordable is because you don't have a lot of money. So sorry, I don't think you can come to California. And you probably wouldn't because we're so progressive. That's too bad. I think you need to Set your politics aside because global heating is not going to care what your politics are. You need to get out. You need to find a place that's suitable for you, that isn't going to have these kinds of storms, because you're done with storms now. You've got enough PTSD that the next storm is simply going to break your brain. The next storm is going to break your heart. It's going to ruin you. People will be, jumping off of balconies into the storm surge with the next storm. People are done. And you need to think in clearer terms. Getting out. If any opportunity comes your way for your own survival and your own peace of mind and your own sanity, get out. You need to get out. This isn't going to improve. It can only get worse. It will get worse. Every year it will get worse. Maybe some years are not as bad as the year before, but over time, every year will be worse than the years before. You need to get out. I am saying this as clearly as I can because I feel compelled to tell you what they will not. No one in your state is going to tell you to get out. They are not science-based. They are not data driven. And to be quite frank, they don't give a shit. You're poor. Right now, you're broke. You're bankrupt. You're hanging on a thread. They know that you're not going to vote in the next election. You can't even get to a fucking polling place. You're done. They don't need you. You don't have any money. You don't have a job. You can't participate in the economy. In fact, to state it clearly, you're going to be a burden because you have nothing. You will have nothing. They will not help you. You will be living in a tent. It might be a nice tent, but it's going to be a tent. And it might even come from the UN, just like the UN is always bailing poor people out in third world countries. You might even get a UN tent. They are not going to save you. They don't care. You have nothing. Therefore, you're of no interest to them. You need to get out. You need to go someplace else. And if you can't do that, then you need to be prepared to save yourself. If you have to stay where you are, then all I can recommend is you work with your neighbors who also probably have nothing. You work with your neighbors and you try to create a more resilient community. Maybe it's where you currently live. Maybe it's inland a little ways. Maybe if you pull your resources from this scanty insurance payouts, maybe 3 or 4 families can go in on a piece of property. Maybe 3 or 4 families, 8 families can go in on one piece of property and live 8 families together. And if it's a big enough piece of property, you can have a nice garden and you can grow some food and you'll have each other and you'll have each other to pick yourself up again when things go badly. Yeah, that's village life. And I say that a lot on this channel. People need to start working together. The government is in no position right now to save you. And you're about to find that out. When you do find that out, when they come along and say, well, we'd love to help you, but right now it's just a little bit tight. And when you hear those words, it's just a little tight right now, we'll be back. When you hear that, you need to understand you're doomed. You're doomed. And I'm here to tell you that you are. And this is only going to get worse. You need to find some people, either your own family or friends in some other state where you can go to be safer than where you are now. Or you need to pool resources with people that live in your same situation and find a way to get out collectively, to get out. Move yourself inland, change your situation. I don't know what you have to do. Figure it out. I can't give you any more advice. I'm not there on the ground. I don't know what your options are. But you need to get out. And if you can't do it individually, then you need to do it collectively. And you need to start thinking about what that means and how you pull that together and how that happens for you and your family and your friends and your neighbors. You need to meet in the middle of the street. You need to give each other a big hug, and you need to start thinking in concrete terms about getting out. Because if you don't, you're not going to survive. Your situation is going to get worse and worse and worse until finally You're floating out to sea on the storm surge. You know I'm right. That's your fear right now. That the next storm is going to drag you out to sea. Or you're going to be living in a FEMA camp inland in some tent. How's that going to work out? You need to start thinking clearly about everything I have told you, because you are in trouble. That's all I have to say to the people of Florida. Global heating is real. Oh man, is it ever real? It's going to get worse, and you get to go first. What was it I heard? Collapse early and avoid the rush. Yeah. You get to go first. Hey, the United States is the wealthiest country in the world. We got the biggest GDP of any country on earth. We got so much money. We invest so much in all kinds of projects. Lucky for you, you're embedded in that. See if you get any money out of these fuckers. Don't let them throw you under the bus. Don't let them shunt you off to the side. This is the wealthiest country on earth. This isn't Bangladesh. This isn't Pakistan. This isn't India. There's money. Get it and get out. Don't get it to rebuild on the same slab that's been washed away 3 times in 5 years. Get out. Collapse early and avoid the rush. I got other things to do here in sunny California. I would say good luck, but you don't need luck and you don't need prayers. You need to act. You need to act in your own best interest, and you need to do it now. Now. You need to act. You need to get out now. Good luck anyway.